This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain. Alba.
You gotta listen, you don't have to read. For historian.
Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast misadventuring into the archives of medical history and beyond. Each show, we'll dissect a case from the past to learn a little something about how medicine got to be the way that it is today. I'm Dr. Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Aaron.
Oh, hi. Hi there.
And Dr. Mike.
I'm in a bad mood.
All right.
You might just want to, not talk to me.
It's going to make for a good show. And as well as our medical history intern extraordinaire, Alba. Hi, Alba.
Hi, I'm always in a good mood.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not true.
Well, I was going to ask everybody, since today's Thanksgiving, what's the food you're looking forward to the most?
Tofurkey.
That was going to be my joke.
Was it really?
I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so...
I'm a pescatarian.
Ooh. You only eat food made by Joe Pesci?
Correct.
I'm looking forward to Joe Pesci's Brussels sprouts, to be honest.
We're actually going to make our own turkey this year. I'm just hoping it's edible.
Like you're growing it from an egg?
Turkey?
Well, cook our own turkey. No, I'm not. Good Lord.
What
Give
do
me
you-
a...
what do you
yeah.
want? Hire that job out every year?
Aaron?
I just used to... the last few years, we just have catered it. You can, go to restaurants and you just buy a turkey, a Thanksgiving dinner. Here, they give you a big box full of stuff. You just throw it in the oven. You take it out. It's really good.
Yeah, fair.
Do you have a lot of
very
leather-bound books?
No.
King of the castle, king of the castle. I don't make my own turkey. I order it.
Well,
Hey,
as
man.
you guys can all hear, Mike is continuing with his technical difficulties. We're going to pitch in and buy him a new computer at some point, but with...
Yeah, that's why I'm in a bad mood.
It's not you, listener. It's Mike's computer. He's not mad at you. Anywho, before we get going...
How do you uninstall Chrome?
I can't wait to ask you Mike's mailbag now. Before we get going on that, let's take a moment to say a few words about our sponsor, Artery Inc. Well, this is the final show that you'll hear us talk about our contest sponsored by Artery Inc. In this case, if this is your first time hearing about it, here's how it works. Artery Inc., the anatomy art-inspired apparel company from right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yeah, the one that likes to support good causes and is a homegrown business owned and operated by amazing, inspiring women entrepreneurs. Yep, that company is doing a giveaway for our fans. So through the end of November, if you send us a Mike's Trivia question to use on the show, you'll be entered into a contest to win a free t-shirt and a Show Me Your Guts coloring book from Artery Inc. A few stipulations do apply. You'll see them if you go to our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com, where you can enter the contest and read about those said stipulations. And as always, if you use our promotion code HISTORYPOD at checkout on orders over $35, you'll save 10%. Note that does not apply to subscription boxes. All right, let's get those questions in. It's almost over. Hey, Mike, ready for trivia?
I'm ready, I think.
Okay.
I might get this one right. 'Cause I'm not paying
You actually might get
attention.
this one right. This one's fairly interesting, I would say. So, all right. This is Mike's Trivia Challenge, a part of the show where we ask Mike a medical history trivia question that's nearly impossible to answer if you don't prepare or read into it, because that's just how this segment works. And if Mike does get the trivia question right, listener gets nothing. But if they get it wrong, we give them an eponym. You know what I'm realizing, gentlemen? I didn't think of an eponym this time.
No, you did not.
I put it all together, and I think we're gonna have to make up an eponym on the spot. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay, we can do
All
that.
right. Well,
Oh, you did that on purpose.
I actually did not. So this week, the question was asked by Mandy. Question is, so when was neurocysticercosis first reported, and where did it happen?
Now we're going to
Where
see what
did it
that
happen?
is.
So neurocysticercosis is this worm or parasitic infection you get where you get these cystic parasites in your brain. Horrifying. One of the reasons why I really don't like to eat pork.
It's uncooked pork.
First described in the 1940s It has been around as long as pigs have been around. Usually only affects people that handle pork. Again, usually in the Central Americas. It was Ecuador where it was first discovered.
We got 1940s Ecuador.
Yeah.
Anything else you want?
Brain parasites. They originally called pig handler's disease. I don't know.
Swine flu.
I'm afraid to tell him he's wrong because of the way this started. He's not far off, though. All right. So, 1901 was the first case report officially written up.
Right by the
Correct century.
Yeah, correct century.
That's pretty good.
And it was actually Mexico is where the first case was described.
Okay, I'm pretty close. I said Central America.
You were definitely. Might be the one of the closest you've ever been. Geographically,
yeah.
and you're right, it can favor some of the geographic areas you are talking about, but just to kind of summarize for the listener, what this is neurocystic sarcosis is it's a worm infection you can get that where the parasites are able to travel up into your brain, form cysts in your brain. It's actually in some parts of the world, it's like a leading cause of epilepsy in the adult world.
So gross.
Yeah.
And the little cysts have little worms inside them.
Yep. And basically, like Mike said, like this is the reason that when my mom made pork chops, like you could sharpen knives on them because she would cook them
like you could barely eat
so
'em.
much. We never knew why, but this, among a few other diseases, was one of those things. So yeah, I never understood why anybody would have pork chops because they were just never. My mom's an amazing cook, but that just never was the thing I would look forward to. But so I mean, generally, if you're gonna eat, if nothing else, if you're gonna eat pork, at least cook it very well and don't handle.
It's
pigs,
actually not the worst worm.
Don't handle pigs.
No, there's definitely others we could try to figure out, and certainly. But okay, so we're gonna have to award an eponym and come up with one on the spot.
What's the
Mandy.
name of the?
This is for Mandy.
Mandy.
Okay, so Mandy, we put all of our heads together, and on the spot, we came up with this. You didn't get to hear all the brainstorming, but it was excellent. So what exists in the annals of medicine is a term called Mandy's masseteromegaly, or masseteromegaly, some variation thereof. And this refers to the masseter muscle, which is goes from kind of the side of your head, goes down, and or side of your skull goes down and basically brings your jaw up. So it's the muscle that when you clench your jaw, you see that like bulge on the side. That is that muscle. And so this condition actually comes from eating super cooked pork, because you might have had parents like ours. And so when you eat this pork and it's extremely tough, your masseter muscle becomes large. So masseteromegaly would mean large masseter muscle, and it becomes so hypertrophied, so large and strong that it is like a distinctive clinical physical exam finding feature. And so strong, in fact, that when you do eat pork, if it happened to be undercooked, the masseter muscle is so strong that your teeth will actually chew through all the larvae that you don't even know are even there. So it's protective. Basically, if you have this finding, you will not get neurocystic sarcosis. So there you go.
Yay.
You are welcome, Mandy. I really appreciate the question. And we are, as mentioned, we are in the last bit of our contest. So by the end of the month, just got to get them in. All right. With that, I guess we'll go to the main show.
Yeah, I got, so it's going to be a little bit of a throwback episode, just more history and less case, but I do think we should start with a case. Mm-hmm. So I want y'all to imagine that you're in a mall, because those still exist.
I was like, what's a mall?
Some places, right? You're in a mall and you're walking towards, I said towards the KB Toys, because there's a new Gravedigger action figure out. So y'all want to go with Max to get his action figure. So you guys are all excited.
Wait, is it the monster truck or it's...
Oh, great. I don't know, man. That was my best
that an
try
Undertaker
at a
reference?
wrestler. Undertaker. Let's do that. It's a limited edition Undertaker. I'll change it. And you notice this woman walking the other way, say mid-40s-ish. All of a sudden she stops. She turns pale. She grabs her chest. She collapses. Just falls.
Both sides are just the center.
What do you do?
Did she just come out of the buckle?
Well, last time I was in a mall, I was like probably between 16 and 19, so nothing, because I didn't know what to do.
I would have I probably would have laughed like Beavis and Butthead. She just grabbed her chest.
I would have called 911. Been like,
No.
somebody's got to do something about
No,
that.
you wouldn't have. Albert, no, you wouldn't have. You would have taken out your phone and recorded it. Oh, shit, she's dead.
No, I would never.
Well, Did we save her? How'd that go?
Yeah, what
It
happened?
sounds like we didn't do anything.
Collectively, something happened.
Well, if that's what you guys decided to do, a bunch of people just stood around and looked at her and didn't do anything.
It's the second best thing you can do.
Alba called 911.
Mhm.
So that's good. And the paramedics probably show up. Let's see, it's in a mall. So I think about 7 minutes.
Yeah, standard paramedic response time to them all.
Yeah, and they come running
Wait,
down.
do we get Paul Blart there first?
How close
Then
to
they turn
the
her over.
Orange Julius is she?
She's a ways. She's like she's not very close. Do you think Orange Julius's kill people? I mean, they probably do,
No,
but I'd be more worried
I
about
need
the
to
hot
know
dog
that's
going
to be center of the mall, right? So the food court's usually center mall. So if she's near the Orange Julius, she's in the center.
Sometimes. Nah, sometimes. It all depends on the mall.
Every mall I grew up in.
Does she have a Cinnabon?
No.
That's a
somewhere
good
on her
reference
person?
There's
point.
no food. She didn't. I mean, you might know whether she choked or not if you actually went over and tried to look at her or anything, but you didn't. So
Well, in my head, this is
How
a
can I tell
mall, like,
from
and I'm
15 feet
I'm not a
away?
doctor yet, so I don't know what I'm doing.
but I've been to
Oh,
a
you
mall
want
since-
us to interpret this as in like modern times? Sorry, I was in character there.
I can't
I
look
t-
at her now.
I didn't say it was 1986, Max. I said
You
now.
implied it by using mall.
I would have said,
references.
There's still. I said there's still malls. There are still malls around. There. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's another wormhole.
so she grabs her chest, she collapses.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
got pale.
Yeah.
Is this pre or post
Okay.
the era of AEDs, automated defibrillators?
It's now.
It's now.
It's now.
You said she was in a
Yes.
mall. I can't.
Wait,
that's
she's in a
yeah,
mall
no,
now?
There's
Still
no malls
malls
right now.
There are malls. Yes, there
All right,
are.
fine. We're in
There
the
are-
fictional mall that
barren
exists somewhere
wastelands.
in the year 2023.
I would run up and say, ma'am, you can buy your stuff online now.
There are malls in your very city, Maxwell.
No, I haven't been to one in so long. Okay, so
Well, I know
let's
that's why,
get the-
but you
we'll
had to
check
find
for
the
a
KB
pulse.
Toys.
we'll
You had
check
to
for a
find the
pulse.
store that was only in the mall.
Do we have any?
Oh, check for what? How do you check for a pulse, Max?
I
With your fingers.
Okay.
put
No, there's
fingers
no
on the
pulse.
carotid.
No
Yeah,
pulse.
there's no.
There's
Okay.
no-
Well,
no
then
pulse.
I since I'm the physician, I'm going to make somebody else do CPR. Well, I think so.
I
Mike's going
kind
to
of
do
know
CPR.
CPR.
This is going to be a great episode. What do
I'm
you mean by
not
kinda? What do you mean by
qualified.
kinda?
I mean, I used to be qualified, and I've done it at work a bunch of times for simulations. I'm just not like certified.
I'd sweep her purse for a wallet and run away.
Okay, so
All right,
we'll do
well-
CPR. Calling paramedics since Albo is already doing the right thing. If we have an automated external defibrillator, let's throw that thing on.
We got to go find it, right? So you have to tell somebody to go
Do you want
find
me to
it.
run this code or not?
Oh, just as an aside, you guys, do you ever get those mock codes stuck in your head in these situations where somebody brings these up and get the, Eddie, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Eddie? Almost every time, but it's the Alien Ant Farm version.
So for the listener that has
in my
no
head.
idea what you're talking about, besides the Alien Ant Farm
Yeah,
reference,
tell me
can
about
you
the
explain why
codes.
Annie, are you okay, would come up?
No. We're not going to. Let's do that. Let's save it. That's going to
Save
be.
it? Ooh.
That's going to be a call ahead.
No? Okay.
It's a
Wait, she
little
was at
Easter egg.
Annie's. She got a
Some
chocolate
people
chip
already
cookie.
know what it's referencing.
So somehow Mike
Yep.
stumbled into a good reference for later
He
in the show.
stumbled into
Okay.
an Easter
All
egg.
right,
Yes,
well.
he did.
I'm a podcast god.
Okay, so,
So-
we've got all right.
Do
We've
you-
got the external. So
Okay, so you're doing CPR. Somebody went to go get the AED.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. Do you feel like CPR is a difficult skill, Max? I mean,
No. Well, not. I will say the barrier for your average person to start it or know when to start or feel comfortable or confident is probably one of the biggest
Mhm.
barriers. But when you actually do it, and and especially nowadays, even compared to when I exited training, and I'm sure you guys had a few more things. Now it's literally just push on the chest and
Yep.
get help.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
honestly that is CPR distilled in 2023. It's no longer like Baywatch where it's like all the mouth to mouth and all that stuff. We don't do that anymore.
They
But
cut
it's
out the
just-
yeah,
airway.
you don't have to do
Yeah, a
that at
couple
all.
breaths and they spit up
Yep.
water and
100%
they're
of the time.
alive again. Totally
Yep.
fine.
She has poor
Not stunned at all.
dentition. There's a lot of, well, maybe not. Maybe her teeth are perfect. She has a lot of lipstick though, so you don't want to get in trouble when you go home. You just stay away. You stay away from the math.
It should be very tiring. It's a workout. Like, so doing CPR is not like, in the movies where they're like doing the little compressions,
No,
which
yeah, CPR is like it's like a hockey shift. You know, a minute and 45 minutes max. Then you got to change.
It is hard work. Yes.
Change people.
So you put
right,
your two
yeah.
hands over each other and what? Probably two
Mike and I
finger widths
put our hands over
above
each other's hands?
No, just one of you at a time.
okay.
Then we turn
With
into
two
Captain
finger widths
Planet.
above the like the breastbone or the solar plexus, right?
Is it like it's three? When I was certified before, it was like 3 finger breadths above the xiphoid process. So like above the bottom of the sternum,
solar plexus,
and
right?
then solar plexus. Okay.
Can we quick aside?
And then,
I don't remember. I think in medical school we asked like the solar plexus, and I feel like my anatomy professors were like, "That's not really a thing."
It's not really a
it's
thing,
not
but
a
it's
thing.
common
It's
in
a
common
chakra.
parlance, though.
That's what we-
Right. So if you say
Yeah, it's a
xiphoid
chakra.
process
I
to
know.
the
I just want to know
general
if that was
public.
everybody's
yeah.
experience. Yeah. But no. Okay. Sorry.
You know.
Go ahead, Alba.
You knew it, Bob.
So 3 finger breadths above the bottom of the sternum, and one hand over the other, like, you know, interlace fingers, and so that you get maximum pressure, and then elbows straight. I don't know. I know they can't see me, but I have to talk. I have to do it as I'm describing it.
Yeah.
Elbows straight, and then you want to get like above the patient, even if like you need I've done it for sims and codes at work, so we'll get like a step stool to get high above, and then pretty deep pressure, though I don't know how to gauge that. And then the song is "Staying Alive" for the beat.
Mhm.
Staying alive.
Yeah, but don't say it like that.
Don't do that though, because
That
it's an
sounds a little
emergency.
inappropriate.
People are like, "Don't do that." No, I'll just do it in my head, not out loud. I get in
Yeah.
trouble. No, I would not.
Interesting.
Do that. No,
Another one bites the dust is the same
Yeah, I like-
speed.
Oh,
That's-
I would
I like
not.
that.
do
Which is
that.
a little bit more macabre.
Sorry, my dog's eating
Another
my
one
chair.
bites the dust.
Well, so
Needs-
all right,
Yeah,
that's all
so
happening.
chest
Did we
release,
win?
you guys, that's perfect. Yeah, well, you start the CPR right away, the bystander CPR,
Yeah, of course I did.
and then somebody brings back the AED, which is you just put that thing on, and then you wait an interminable amount of time because you can't interrupt it, and it does its little thing and says "Shock advised." So you push the button and it shocks her.
Yeah. Well, why don't
and
you
you get a
describe what
pulse
it
back.
is? Because
So the AED, right? So those are, you walk through lots of public places, and the reason I chose a mall actually is because there's a lot in malls. So a public place,
not people,
there's these
but
boxes.
there are things.
They're still, Max. I'm going to take you to a mall. It's going to be a field trip. It's going to be really fun. You're gonna love it.
Go to the
It's going to be
museum.
great.
It's fine.
We'll go to GameStop for you. Yeah. So like there's these, usually some sort of box, and it says AED on the side. When you open it up, it's got 2 big stickers in there, and the stickers will have a diagram of where it goes, and one goes on the left chest and usually the other on the left side of the body. It'll show you. You just tick those on. You have to take the person's clothes off to put the stickers on. So you put those on, and then usually there's a button that says power button, and usually it says analyze. They're a little different, but there's like not many buttons, right? Because they're supposed to be simple. And then the machine will read the heart rhythm and look at it. And if it's a rhythm that will respond to a shock, the machine will tell you shock advised, and then you can push the button and it'll deliver a shock and ideally restart the heart.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So in this case, yeah, otherwise young, healthy woman, you did CPR right away after you made fun of me. And then, and then got the AED right away. So within the first few minutes, if you get a pulse back, that's a really good thing. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk to about today is the history of all of CPR and how we got to where we are. So there were,
Sorry to interrupt you, but is this stemming from the Lazarus thing? Are you still worried about the Lazarus thing? Did you do a deep dive in
No.
CPR because of the Lazarus thing from last episode?
no,
Okay, just
no.
checking.
I don't know. I forget the exact trigger on this.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I think it was reading a story about something. Anyway, so there's so much to it, and it's kind of hard to do one specific case because this happens, all the time. This happens like thousands of times per year, probably in your own city. So, but I do think the history is really interesting. We're going to go through a little bit of the history of, so the 3 main components of this bystander CPR. Max, you mentioned mouth to mouth. So that's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mouth to mouth has a long history. Then the other one is the compressions that Alba described perfectly. And then the last one is the shocking, which is sort of the newest component. But part of the reason I wanted to go through it and be like, hey, you're in public, somebody collapses and you go do this thing, is that what you guys just did is probably the most important step to try to make sure that woman has a chance of surviving her heart problem.
You trying to make this a wholesome show?
A wholesome show?
Yeah, you're gonna.
Oh no, there's crazy stuff in here. There's necrophilia. There's
Ooh,
there's
right.
rectums. There's all sorts of stuff.
Ooh,
It's great.
yay.
Yeah.
I was
So-
I was worried
favorite
this
things.
going to be an overall positive experience. All right.
No,
you win me back.
it isn't. So we're going to start with kind of
Hey, can we skip to the good part?
Dude, there's going to be rectums in the first section. Okay.
Oh God.
All right. It's great. It's going to be great.
Oh wait, I know why. Though. Is that the drowning resuscitation?
Yeah.
It's his story.
Yeah.
Gotta let
I know.
Aaron cook.
I'm just
All right.
so excited about
So
talking about butt stuff.
he can't hold himself back. You would have been a great Enlightenment scientist.
I like that now Mike's
Oh
mood has
my God.
improved considerably.
Yeah, it's improved.
It
All I had
has.
to do was
This is
talk
what
about
did it.
rectums.
It's a,
He's waiting for the
Necrophilia and
necrophilia.
rectums.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right, so we'll go back to the Age of Enlightenment. Actually, the first time the Age of Enlightenment in general, I think people started to fight against the concept of death more because they thought science would save them, which
And they
it
won.
didn't.
No, they didn't.
They still did. Although that'll be another part of the story later. Cool. Some people still think they can win. That you can't, but they thought they would fight it. So 1732 is actually the first sort of Western acknowledgement of a true attempt at like a medical mouth to mouth or some sort of breathing for a patient that looks like they had died. Lots of websites talk about the Bible talking about breathing breath into them. That is, I don't buy that. That's some mouth to mouth thing. I think that's a spiritual thing.
You don't do CPR spiritually?
No, I don't. I mean, sometimes, yeah. Dr. William Tosak or Tosich or something like that, I don't know, a Scotsman, is recognized in 1732 as the first person to try using bellows. So he got like a fireplace bellows that pushes the air, when you're trying to make the fire be stronger. I don't know if anyone has. We're talking about
Yeah,
balls
no,
and
I
fireplaces.
just realized that
Yeah,
has
so
to be our
the whole
skit.
thing.
The Scottish
Yeah.
guy trying to convince people. Anyway,
Yep. So, and there's a coal miner that was unresponsive, and the patient like got better after he did these bellows in his mouth. So he put the bellows in the mouth. It was like, and then he got better. And it was really exciting. Everybody was really excited. So coal miner unresponsive. Any thoughts about why he might have gotten better? I have an idea, but I don't know. I
so
just
he's
wanna
in the
keep you
coal mine.
engaged.
He's unresponsive.
bellows?
Lungs are pure.
because they took him out of the coal
Yeah.
mine.
Those
because
are
of the
pure coal
carbon
dust.
monoxide.
Right, there you go. Carbon monoxide. So if he had carbon monoxide poisoning that was bad enough that made him pass out but didn't stop his heart, the treatment for that is oxygen, initially. And
Real question: is that like ambient
Yeah.
carbon monoxide in a coal mine?
Yeah.
carbon monoxide poisoning, yeah,
Okay.
it's like a thing. It's there have been
I usually think
Yeah,
of like
there have been-
explosion. I guess that's the. I couldn't remember if it was like methane
isn't that
or
the
whatever.
canary in
you
the
get
coal
trapped.
mine
I mean, there's
thing?
all sorts of trapped
Sure,
gases. Yeah, all sorts of trapped gases, but carbon monoxide.
Mining coal is a really safe thing to do. Am I
It
wrong?
is. It's very safe, and yeah, people do well. They have a long career. They're usually very happy, and they make a lot of money.
Good. No, that's good.
Yeah, so that was sort of the first one, but he didn't take that anywhere because he's a loser. And then the Dutch and the English around the middle 1700s both sort of simultaneously came up with these societies that had a similar sort of Enlightenment outlook, and they wanted to help people that looked dead. So in 1767,
They wanted to help people that looked dead.
yeah, they're like, there's all these dead people. Like, we should do something. We can't just stand there.
Okay, so they were dead. They
Um,
didn't just look dead.
Oh,
Well,
They
Gotcha.
wanted to
they
help
probably-
people who had died in
they
front of other
probably kinda
people. Is
looked
that
dead.
what
who
you're saying?
had died who were
Well,
dying?
I don't know.
And
people would die a lot. So the Amsterdam, there's a lot of canals. So you'd be walking around and it was very common to have somebody just kind of on the side of the canal or floating in the canal, like, dead. So, and there were a lot of drownings. I doubt they had modern safety fences along the canal. So the Dutch were the first ones who formed the Amsterdam Society in favor of drowned persons in 1767.
As opposed to opposed to the drowned
In
people?
favor of them.
Was
We
there
would
an
prefer our
opposite
people to be
camp there?
drowned.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm actually
People that wanted to
actually
swim.
more
they
drowned
wanted to-
people. No,
maybe it's better
love
in
the
Dutch.
name.
I mean,
I love the name. Is all I'm saying.
It's definitely a translation. The Bernard Donfalaar with lots of A's was sort of one of the stars of this early, but it was a pretty, there were a lot of people in this society, and they would definitely try to revive drowned people. So
It's a weird hobby, but fine. Okay.
yeah, well, I mean, they were trying. So Enlightenment resuscitations, they usually took place in taverns. So, and I think this is because, first off, there weren't good ERs, and if there were hospitals, you probably didn't want to take anyone there. So they're public, and they're usually warm, and there are lots of them. So what they would do is they would fish these people out of the canal, and then they would try to get the water out. So they'd roll the patient back and forth over a barrel. That was one thing they did commonly. It was a bit controversial because they said
the barrel.
Yeah, they said it might hurt them. They might hurt the person to roll them, and yeah, they would, like.
But that was step one in their algorithm.
That was kind of step one: get the water out the lungs. Yeah, then you try to warm them up. So you bring them into the tavern, and there's a lot of ways that they would describe doing this. Sometimes it was skin to skin contact with the dead-ish person. They would wrap them in warm cloth. They'd have a fire, to try to warm. Then they'd rub oil all over the person. So,
Aaron, what rating are we giving this one? We have people, you're throwing people over barrels. People are getting naked. There's oil. They're not doing
Oil,
CPR.
yeah.
Amsterdam hasn't changed that much, has it?
Yes.
This is the
I don't know.
necrophilia part.
This isn't even the actual creepy necrophilia part.
No.
Stop
No.
resisting.
That usually it'd be oil with some sort of stimulant in the oil. Ammonia, spirit of rosemary was mentioned. So there are a lot of those things. So then the next step after that, if that didn't work, then you go to the tobacco smoke enema. So either you put tobacco smoke in the bellows, like the things that blow the air, and you can blow that into their lungs. It's really good for them. But they would often do this rectally. So they would take a large amount of tobacco smoke and they would try to blow tobacco smoke into their rectum.
Trying to decide if it's better or worse than the naked oil barrels.
I mean,
is that where the term
you weren't naked with the barrel?
Yeah, right.
It certainly could. I don't know. Stop blowing smoke up my ass because I'm not dead.
I just don't understand how does that seem like a good idea? How do you get there?
Well,
I mean,
wait, what year is it? This is
1700s.
Yeah, okay. So they're like,
1700s.
that person died. They need a cigarette, but they can't smoke it through their mouth. So let's put it all up the butt as fast as possible because it's the 1700s. This makes sense.
Yeah, and then what they would do.
This, so Max says, "Let's put it up the butt as fast as possible."
Then the last one, the Hail Mary, was to stick a feather down their throat and tickle the back.
Ooh, yes. When do you call him Yankee
No.
Doodle Dandy?
No
Is
way.
that at the end?
You said tickle the throat with a feather.
Yeah, the back of the. So you'd stick a feather like into the back of their throat, open their mouth, and stick a feather down their throat and try to.
I'm
tickle
really
them.
glad CPR evolved beyond whatever this mess is.
You guys have ever tried that before? It's worked the 3 times that I've done it.
They've woken up every time.
All 3?
Yep. It's like, give vasopressin. No.
No,
Somebody give me a feather.
Somebody get me a feather. So the Dutch actually started this, but a lot of the original writing of the Dutch society is lost to us, probably because I don't speak Dutch. It's probably actually.
I'm going to throw one other layer here. So an
So-
entire society of people came up with this as the answer. Is my favorite part of the story now.
They did, yes. The English started right around the same time. So 1774, probably somebody went down to Amsterdam and was like, oh, that looks like a good idea. I want to rub oil on people. That was called the Society for the Recovery of Persons Apparently Drowned. And that started in 1774.
Also catchy.
That turned into actually the Royal Humane Society, which still survives. And unlike here, it's not for pets, it's for people. And then now they give out awards. So like the best life-saving heroic thing that somebody does in a year, you can get an award from the Royal Humane
I
Society.
hope they have like some kind of weird other award for the weirdest new form of CPR that you can come up with.
They don't know. Well, they might. So they built like a structure in Hyde Park in London, which if you look at Google Maps of Hyde Park or have been there and you're fancy, then it's a really beautiful park like Central Park. And there's a very large lake in the middle of it and people would swim in it. And then therefore there were a lot of drownings and this bothered people. So they built this sort of receiving house. Dr. William Hawes was an early member and he really got into trying to see if he could figure out how to resuscitate people, but he kind of made it weird because he would offer money for people that brought drowning victims to this house to see what worked.
Never a good incentive. I give you money if you bring me dead or nearly
Bring
dead
me
people.
a dead person.
Will always result in a bad economy.
Yeah, fans of the pod, if there's new folks listening to, you got to go back and listen to Burke and Hare in Edinburgh to see how that might be a bit of a conflict of interest. They did pay more if it turned into a successful resuscitation.
Oh, good.
So that was good.
So you just want to waterboard them for a bit before they bring him in?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I'm sure. I don't know how many people got like clocked in the back of the head and dumped into the lake and then dragged up for the $250.
More than zero, I'll wager.
A lot.
So they said their estimates were about 100 some drowning victims a year. That was kind of, so they raised a ton of money because everyone was like, give money for the drowning people, and turned into this whole thing to try to all this stuff. And it went on for like, hundreds of years. And they would run these, like in the Dutch example, they would also run them in taverns. So they would pay the tavern keepers like $125 in modern money to like host this resuscitation. And then the people would come and watch the show, and it was a big old show and kind of an event. So yeah, I think that's probably not great. It's around 1844, they had a summary of all the things they had tried or what worked. So the thing that seemed to work best was rubbing the patient vigorously with cloth or flannel and warming them up. So
I'm wearing
that
flannel.
was,
I'm
so yeah, it's a lifesaver.
more secure.
Yeah, they said the bellows should be worked by trained medical men, because of course there weren't any trained medical women at that time that we know of. Oh yeah, we do. We know of a lot of them, but they weren't allowed. They weren't allowed in this receiving house. They were probably wanted nothing to do with
What
this
year is
nonsense.
this again?
It's probably better off, honestly.
Yeah, right.
They're better off for not learning the bad habits.
Yeah.
Sure.
They said ivory nostril pipes worked really well. So they made little ivory pipes that you would put in their nose to help deliver the air. And then they said, what really seems to work well is if you flap the arms up and down 15 times a minute. So you grab the person's arms and you flap them up over their head, and then you flap them down again. And you do that 15 times a minute until you get tired or they wake up or it doesn't seem to work.
I feel like
While they're laying down? Or you sit them up and flap their arms?
I had the same question, Alba. Thank you.
You could
Because it seems hard to do.
It's very hard to do. I'm like,
Come on,
this is actually harder than modern CPR. These people were strong.
You'd have to coordinate a few people.
You flap the arms. So they said they had 31 rescues in 1884 alone, and they said 15 of those people walked out, which is a rescue rate of almost 50%. Which
Don't believe the numbers.
That's a bad selection. They've selected the wrong patients. They probably
I think
selected a bunch of drunk
they selected
people.
the right patients.
and-
Exactly,
yeah.
right?
They started flapping their arms. They're like, oh my God, what's happening?
I feel better now. Please leave me
Yes,
alone.
that's a win.
I had like 270,000 bathers. So quite, not every day, but actually not even every week, but a few. I'm sure there's a season for swimming in London. So this is probably the summer season only. Yeah. So that was like the early part. This all sort of continued 1900s. And then they got in a fight about which the better method was to sort of help people breathe with their arms. So Marshall Hall in 1856, he actually didn't think the arms were a good idea. He said you should roll the patient back and forth from face down to face up and just roll them back and forth again and again and again. And he said you should do that about 16 times a minute, which I think is even harder than the flap the arms up and down. I don't know if anyone who's listening.
Well, you're going to get some arm flap with that too if you do it that fast.
Yeah. But unfortunately, people noticed that first off, this was bad for their necks.
You're going to need a lot of buddies. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was bad for their
times. How much is that?
Face and neck. So people would get injured because they would break their face as they got flipped over and back.
You ever see Karate Kid
and back.
too? Like when they had the drum, the flum, 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 flum. That's what they had to look like. They had
maybe Andre the Giant just did that.
Yeah, Andre could probably do it himself. Let's talk about wrestling.
Yeah, and then people tended to vomit a lot when they got yeah.
The people doing it or the people receiving it?
The receivers would vomit if they were
So they'd like vomit and then
they probably
wake up?
vomited either way, alive or dead. Probably half the time. I don't know. I mean, it's not. There's not a lot of published.
It's not half the time. There's no way.
So then this guy, Henry Robert Sylvester, he said, "You're crazy. You're doing it wrong." And he published a case in the British Medical Journal of an infant where he raised the arms up over the head and then he put them down again and he pushed on the side of the chest. And he did this a bunch of times and the infant actually got better. So he said, ooh, you should do this, Sylvester's method. There's a picture of this on one of the websites that's linked in the show notes where they have the person like on a table, like with the head down and the knees keeping them from falling off the table. And then the rescuer is flapping their arms up and down. And then you kind of push on the chest when it's bent against their chest, and the reason it probably worked for a kid, well, there's a couple reasons. I mean, kids tend to die more from respiratory issues. So you're more likely to be successful with an infant if you're fixing breathing. And if it was a bad asthma exacerbation, like if you squeeze the chest and get some of the trapped air out, it actually could potentially help. But also I think it probably was just lucky and the kid actually wasn't dead. So I don't know. I don't see how that would potentially work.
Yeah. I have no child CPR jokes. I'm going to be honest with you, Aaron.
No.
Way to make the material easy on us.
Yeah, sorry. Just working. So this lasted until the 1950s. Up until the 1950s, there was some variation of flip the patient over and move their arms to resuscitate them.
Let's be clear that the arms weren't the important
Did
part.
they try shaking them? Because it sounds like that could be another one. Just shake the patient.
Yeah, right. Just that's gonna be great.
There
were some other variations I didn't go through. I mean, there's some Norwegians get in the game and such, and
hey, what do they do?
It's just another variation of the same.
Heavy metals.
Flip them over some way and move the arms some way. They did seem to move more towards people being face down. Sometimes they would massage the back or the bottom of their lungs, which again,
how do you massage the bottom of your lungs? I'm picturing like
your middle back, like your middle back, like it's like the middle back.
Okay.
But yeah, so the 1950s, the people that are sort of credited with inventing modern mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, James Elam and Peter Safar, were two anesthesiologists who, coincident with the polio epidemics, which we talked about with the ICU episode, I just can't get away from these things. They sort of resorted to this in desperation, but because they were anesthesiologists, they like pinched the nose and tilted the head back and breathed in a way that they actually were getting air into the lungs of mostly kids. And it worked. And so, with polio, the reason, again, that works is because you can't breathe on your own because your muscles are paralyzed. So you also could probably blow into their lungs and move air.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
And they worked okay. Yeah. And, I think the thing about this is part of the reason there's reasons mouth to mouth is a bad idea now. And one of them is it's really, really hard. So you have to, first off, get the airway open correctly without hurting their neck, which is difficult because you probably wouldn't too much, but you got to like tilt the head back. And then you have to blow actually not very hard, because if you blow too hard, it goes into the stomach and so on. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. So I think that's why they were successful.
Aspiration sounds horrible.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I've done it on a dummy when I was CPR certified in the 90s, but never since. And it was not easy. You'd have to try like a bunch of times, and then eventually on a mannequin with no phlegm or snot or vomit at all.
Everybody use the same mannequin, or it's kind of weird?
They did. Yeah,
you have to wipe it off with alcohol. Yeah. And I cannot stand the smell of that because of sixth grade CPR.
You wipe it off. Yep. You're like, all right, time for someone else. And you wipe it off. If you had a good teacher. Yeah. So, so they decided to prove that this was a good idea. So they had two experiments, which we should talk about. This is still the 50s. So the first one was Elam. He wanted to prove that humans could ventilate other humans. So as people were waking up from their elective surgeries, but before they had their breathing tube taken out, he would take people off the ventilator, and one of the other doctors would blow in the tube to ventilate that patient to prove that was like cool and they could do it. I don't know about you. I don't want that as part of my recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And
where was the tube again?
In the throat. Like it was a normal tracheal tube.
Okay.
I mean, you could do it pretty well. I mean, actually, it's not a terrible idea if all of a sudden there are power failure, or you have to use a bag. It's not that different. But he was like trying to prove that humans have enough capacity to do it. So then they did a study with 25 healthy volunteers that were paralyzed, and then they got mouth-to-mouth resuscitation until the paralytic wore off, and they used curare, so minutes at least. And then they trained other people to do it too, and they had like 150 learners and 25 healthy volunteers that were just kind of continuously sedated and paralyzed, and then people would do mouth to mouth, and hopefully they didn't die.
That's some old school stuff.
Yeah. So that's the mouth to mouth, and then they're like, okay, this works really well, and you should do it. So they were kind of part of like, well, we think everyone should learn CPR, but you have to figure out where all the compressions come from. So compressions, which is actually we know now, like one of the most helpful things you could possibly do in these situations by far. It's not entirely clear exactly why it works to me, but I'm not a physiologic scientist. There's a German guy, Friedrich Maas, with extra A's as well, who actually got this in the 1890s. So he figured this out and wrote a paper about it. He was also doing, he was probably a surgeon or an anesthesiologist at the time. So in the 1890s, they were using chloroform, which is in the movies. That's the thing they put over your face that completely knocks you out. And that's what they were using for anesthetic.
Yeah. And
it was not easy to dose. And they were just kind of dumping some bottle liquid on a handkerchief and then holding it over your face. So you would be out for your surgery. But if you overshoot, the patient dies quickly.
It's a tricky situation. Nowadays, we have the anesthesia machine is a pretty impressive piece of technology that delivers not chloroform anymore, but it is such a well-dialed, oiled machine that is really pretty cool and fascinating. And there may be a whole show topic there somewhere, but I do like that the old-timey, we're going to put some stuff on a rag and just huff this, and then when we think you might be out, we'll go ahead and start taking off a limb. The good old days.
The 1890s, I would still take it, man.
Oh, over none? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, give me that. That's all right. I'll take the chance of death. But so he had a couple cases again with kids, so that kind of led him to try some stuff just when they got sick or their heart stopped, and he just was trying everything to try to get these kids back when they showed signs of chloroform toxicity, like their eyes would dilate and they would stop breathing completely and so on. So he just was like, maybe I'll compress the region of the heart. And initially it was more at the rate of respiration. So like 15 to 30, somewhere in that range, which would be way too slow.
Yeah. So you're pushing on the chest. You're saying 15 times.
He's just like pushing on the chest 15 times a minute to like help them breathe.
A heartbeat of 15, which is really low.
Yeah. Yeah. And normal heartbeats are what, 60 to 100?
I hope so.
But then he describes in this case, he's like, I just got so, crazy, anxious, worried that he was trying to save this kid. He's like, I just went faster and faster and continued, like wouldn't stop. And then the kid like woke up. He's like, hey, look at this. This worked. And then he did it. He did it a second time on another patient who was like 18, same thing. And he said, well, maybe I should write about this. And the second time he said, look, it seemed to work really well to go really fast. So, and very deep. And not stop until you sort of see that they're waking up or some of the pupils constrict back down. And he had a second person sort of measure a pulse while he was pushing on the chest, which, I mean, we make a lot of fun of old-timey folks, but that would be very creditable, high-quality CPR in the current world.
Yeah, honestly.
This guy was doing in 1890.
Do you guys do that? I usually do that.
Like check a pulse while there's
just
CPR.
Feel a pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually femoral pulse.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, you can definitely feel.
It's a weird pulse. It's different.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like
because you're
pulse.
also watching visually, because you can see somebody pushing down on the chest, and it's sort of like your brain kind of expects to feel the pulse at a certain moment from that. And so I think it's interesting because you see that physical relationship of chest goes down, and then like a moment or two later, you feel the wave of blood from the chest hit your fingers. And I think you don't always get that when you're, if you're not watching somebody physically pump a heart, you're just like feeling a pulse that seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, this guy who managed to do really excellent chest compressions in the 1890s published it, and everyone just kind of ignored it. It was lost to history.
Always good.
Yeah, and I think somebody went back and found it eventually, so like that's how we know, but it wasn't even the inspiration for a bunch of Johns Hopkins guys who rediscovered chest compressions around the 1950s as well. And I'm not going to name them on purpose because they were experimenting on dogs.
Okay.
So they're dead to me.
Yeah, I like it.
They're dead to me too.
They were.
Let's experiment on them.
It's right. But anyway, so they were like experimenting on the dog, and they had done a procedure on this dog, and they were going to try to, I think, shock the heart. But while they had the dog's chest open, they were like squeezing the heart, and they noticed that they could feel a pulse while they were squeezing the heart. And then they just messed around more and realized that, oh, hey, if I push on the chest, then I can also feel a pulse. So they sort of just found it because they were messing with this dog, but they also probably saved a lot of lives. So then they tried it. They just tried it on, this is a lot of people, 20 people that lost pulses during surgery. in the 50s. So I don't know. I mean, they were using sort of modern anesthetic methods, but I'm not sure.
When you said
why
they
they had
tried it,
that
is
many
this like
people.
open massage?
No, this is closed. So the chest was closed.
Okay.
And this was one of the big benefits, right? Because they're like, it's so cool. You don't even have to open the chest to get to the heart. You can just push on the outside of the chest. And they published that, and people were very excited because prior to that, like there were cardiothoracic surgeons or chest surgeons and cardiologists that, probably not cardiologists, who had figured out that you could squeeze the heart while you had your hand on the actual heart in the chest, and you could get a pulse. Like they had figured that out, but that's not
Sounds like really
related to CPR. You can't
sounds
do that.
very easy. I mean,
Yeah.
there was, it wasn't, I don't know if you came across this, but wasn't that like, that was at one point the only kind of CPR that was being done was like, you get the cardiothoracic surgeon to open a chest and.
Yeah. So that's the line. They're
sure
like, oh, you
back in the
don't even
day-
have to open the
Holy
chest.
Yeah, back in the day,
shit,
there was
that's
probably some of
insane.
those
So
like
great.
super salty ones that were like, that's still the best way to do it. I don't open the chest.
Sure, there were.
Just crack them right open and just
You can
pull
really
that
feel
heart
the
out.
heart.
Wow.
Yeah, digression. It is crazy. I have done it. We did a thoracotomy in med school, and because I was in there, the trauma surgeon's like, "Get up here and push on the heart," and he's like, "It's like the Florida State chop. You just go like this. You just push your hands together." And like, I don't know Florida State, but I can understand the alligator.
Were you, were you like, that's the
was like,
Gators,
okay.
right? It's the Gators. Wait,
It's the
which one?
Gators? Is that the Gators?
Seminoles?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, maybe I got it wrong. Is that I don't know.
And
I
he
don't
threw
care.
you
I
out
would
of
love
the
to see
field.
your face right then.
It was
I mean,
crazy.
it's like
Yeah.
this.
because they had opened, so the heart, remember, has like this thick fibrous case and
Nutsack.
it's just scrotum, the heart scrotum. They had cut that open, so I put my hands inside that sac, and then the heart was squishy, and it'd be like, and you could feel liquid going out of it into the body. But yeah, so that's like that was what it used to be, like internal cardiac
Wow.
massage. And they even had little paddles, like little circular, they still have those little circular paddles that they use them in bypass cases, I think, to restart the heart. So but that's not CPR, right? So that I just didn't quite go into that very much. Little digression. They were, along with the mouth to mouth guys, and sort of there was this groundswell of like, hey, this actually works really well. We should tell everybody about this. So now we have the two parts. The third part now is this, what's called defibrillation, which is the electric shock to restart the heart. And this also goes back, it goes back to like this.
Was this the one that was started by Dr. Clooney? Dr. Clooney et al.
Could be. I didn't see that name. I could be wrong.
Georges S. Clooney?
Georges S. Clooney. Yeah.
No, I'm waiting for it.
I don't know.
ER,
Because he
the show ER, Aaron.
restarted. Yeah,
Oh.
I know he was on the show, but he was the drug
I didn't-
pediatrician.
I never saw the show.
Oh, you never saw? He
I've
was
never-
the drug
I've not seen
pediatrician. He
one
never
episode
did
of
anything.
ER.
Well,
I was thinking there's
everyone do
gonna be a
yourself a
George
favor.
Clooney
George
movie.
Clooney is there from the start, and he's the drunk pediatrician whose marriage is ending, which probably would make a lot of people happy because they're like, "Oh, I'll cuddle you. I'll make you feel better." But yeah, he was.
And you know who wrote ER, Max?
George Clooney?
No. You don't know?
Who wrote ER?
He was a physician. He wrote
Oh.
my favorite book,
Mike Froze.
No, I'm.
Andre
we're
the
never gonna
Giant.
know.
Oh, you froze, Mike. Tell us
Michael
again.
Crichton.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He
Did he?
wrote my favorite book. Michael Crichton wrote ER. Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
You know,
How
What's
did
your favorite
did
book?
ER end, have a good ending? Or
Jurassic
did
Park.
it-
It's the only book I've ever read.
yeah, but so Michael Crichton could like never end a book correctly. He always just like, I'm done with this, and then the world solves itself. So did ER have
No,
a good ending?
I think a lot of characters died. Yeah, no, Goose died again.
Oh, no.
No, ER
well,
did
now I'm
not
not
have
going
a
to
good
watch it.
ending.
You just spoiled it for me.
No, the first like 7-8 seasons are really good, and then it progressively gets worse and worse and worse. And helicopters start falling on people, and they do giant.
Sounds like a
there's
Crichton
tanks.
book.
Yeah,
There was only
Such a
one
shit.
T-Rex in it, which is kind of disappointing.
yes. So defibrillation, that's the last piece, right? That people have been shocking things back into the 1700s as well. The first one of the first recognized people is a guy named Peter Abelgaard, which they're all
many
double A's, two A's, a Danish veterinarian and physician. He did both. He was just messing around, and he decided to see what would happen if he shocked a chicken. So, which I don't feel quite as bad about because I eat chickens. So like, they're not like dogs. So he realized he could kill a chicken with a shock to the head, but then he shocked it again, and the chicken woke up. he was so excited that this first case, which he wrote about, he did it like 8 times to this one chicken. He kept like shocking it and dying and then bringing it back. And it just really terrible, and he says, the chicken was kind of dazed in between and would sort of wander around for a bit and didn't feel very good, but then seemed to fully recover within a few days and even laid an egg later. Everyone was very clear to say the chicken laid an egg later, so it must be fine. There's nothing about whether it's, neurologically intact.
I'm sure he did.
Wait, the egg is?
Oh my God.
Then there was a guy named in 1796, this German naturalist Alexander von Humboldt also wrote about this shocking. He managed to revive a bird that ran into his window. So he saw the bird run into the window and he's like, what should I do? And he grabbed a battery, like a 1700s battery, ran out and he put one end on the beak of the bird and he put the other end in the bird's anus and shocked
I believe it's a cloaca.
Sure, the cloaca.
Because it's the one hole for all things, right? One hole to rule them all.
Yeah.
The one hole to rule them all. And in the darkness find them. Yes, definitely. So, and the bird like woke up for a few minutes. Yeah. So, but then he's like, wow, that was really cool. What if I tried it? So he decided to.
See, this man I respect. This is a man of science.
Yes.
He found the perfect patient.
Run into the window
like,
first.
Hey, this bird did really well. What if I suck on a wire and then I put the other end of the wire in my rectum? Let's see what happens. He shocked himself.
The circle of life.
It's definitely the circle of life. But luckily he didn't die. He
This is a
said he had
1700s battery. How many volts could that have had?
Right, exactly. Very few. He
Probably
said he had
10,000.
vivid flashes.
Like a bunch of potatoes and a bunch of electrodes.
I don't know what vivid flashes he was talking about. But anyway, so that's like some of the first evidence that this works. By 1778, actually a little before or around that same time, Dr. Charles Kite saw a girl fall out a window and ran and got a battery as well, and then shocked her.
Those people have batteries.
Quote, every which direction. So I don't think he said he just shocked her a whole bunch of different ways in the street, probably. And then she like woke up and everyone was like, wow, that was really cool.
You had a head
You
injury and
saved
woke
that
up when you were
girl's
shocking
life.
her. Probably had nothing to do with restarting a heart. I know he didn't know that, but
I mean, there is such a thing as commotio cordis, right? So if you suffer a blow to the chest at exactly the wrong time in the cycle of your heartbeat, you can actually go into a cardiac arrest, which would respond to defibrillation, theoretically.
But she fell out of
that's
a window.
giving him a lot.
She probably got knocked out. And he just
Maybe
started
she walked
shocking
on
her
her.
awake.
Yes.
That's honestly what happened. You know that's what
true.
happened.
That's definitely what happened.
But he backed into that.
Don't defend him, Aaron.
This one
know what the
also
hell he was
did.
doing.
I mean, it does
like
work.
the 1700s was this golden age of let's try some shit, and it was the
Yeah, it sounds like it. Jeez.
I guess I shouldn't use bad words if we're still.
Oh no,
trying
I'll
for
just
a
take
rating,
them out
but-
like I take out all the mics.
So and this
More
again
hours
was
for me, it's fine.
completely quiet until the 1940s, and then you had two guys, Dr. Claude Beck and Dr. Paul Zoll. We know him because all the defibrillators now are called Zolls. They figured this out, so they were like experimenting, and they did a bunch of experiments to prove that this would work. Also, usually starting with surgery and then going to external defibrillation and such. And yeah, the initial ones were about 200 pounds. So there's like these big suitcases they would run up and down the hallways. And this went through the same sort of gradual improvement. I mean, there's details here to dig into if people are really into the technical aspects, but there's a lot of it. So
How much physics is involved?
probably a lot. That's why I did the least on that, because I'm like,
shocking
there's
amount.
resistance. I had a lot of resistance to looking at this topic.
Oh, please.
So it was right there. So these forces, they said the public should know about this because we think they could save lives. So around the 1960s, they talked to the American Heart Association, the Red Cross, and these people started to come up with the materials to teach lay people how to do CPR. And initially it was way too complicated. They didn't have any acronyms or anything like that. And people they went through the course, and then 3 months later they would test them and they had kind of no idea what was going on. So they came up with a bunch of acronyms and materials, and they did all the sort of stuff that we see today, which is, it's the evolution now of a big old educational corporation and a bunch of people trying to make this work, which is where CPR kind of came from the 60s. But, I mean, what happened from the 60s to the 90s is just better graphic design, a lot more words, big committees, and lots of meetings, and it's not as interesting as these initial crazy things. So, but there are a couple other things to talk about just in popular culture.
Where does Baywatch figure into it?
Well, it's wrong. The thing that people need to know, and this is, the success rate for people that have a cardiac, first off, it's better in public. So like that story in the mall, an otherwise relatively healthy person, you would assume in their 40s, hopefully, maybe not, who knows, but still witnessed, you guys did CPR right away. That's the best case scenario. And those people, like all comers for the out of hospital cardiac arrest, only about 2 to 3% survive with good functional status. So in Hollywood, it's 75 to 80%. So you have these people that, they're like, oh, we'll do CPR and they'll come back to us, or we'll do this and they come back. Like I 100%, part of the thing is here, like, it was kind of interesting. You guys all were like, I'm not going to do anything. Cause that's actually that happens a lot. Like bystander resistance to doing something.
Sound like monsters.
No, you're normal people. This is what people do. Like they don't, you guys wouldn't do that. You would go help. But like, it's normal for people to not do this. And that was like all this sort of chest only stuff. So, but I think it's just, like when you look at this situation, if somebody goes through this, like the chance of them surviving is extraordinarily low. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything. Although this is, where you could, it does depend a lot on, what are the criteria where you might go into this. But I think people are like, oh, people are doing CPR on, my relative, and they'll come into the ER, for example, and they'll be like, well, yeah, it didn't go well. It's not how I say it. I usually say it a bit better than that.
Well, you're saying, so the perception is that because this, CPR got started, that things should turn out well. And basically the reality is no, it's still in the best case scenario, as you said, 2 to 3%, right? It's rarely the best case scenario, rarely. And the other things that can help is if that person happens to have a shockable rhythm that you can then shock. And, that's not all the time. And so, sometimes and forgive me, I don't mean to step on your point here, but if it can be difficult when that person gets to the ER, and the perception, because of a lot of this popular film, et cetera, is that this should work a lot better, when the reality is it doesn't. I mean, I don't know if you're going into this, Aaron, but is it, there's actually some pushback against the way that these things are displayed in movies, et cetera, because there is sort of a degree of false hope that's given.
I've only ever seen TV. I've only ever seen these situations portrayed on TV or in simulations, and it's always a mannequin with the exact same facial expression that doesn't change. So yeah, my perception would be, I think there's something about Hollywood and like the things that we know are fake, that we're like, well, I know that the Marvel movies, like these are the things that are not fake, or like the love story. Oh, I would actually be mad about that. But there are a lot of things that I think get through to our subconscious, like just that percentage you're talking about. Definitely, if you took how many cardiac events I have seen in Hollywood throughout the course, out of 100% of those, I would say probably 80 to 90 have resulted in like success. Yeah. Like, yay, the person is totally fine. And that's something that subconsciously I would not realize that I am now subconsciously believing that is the percent of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's insane.
With that, we appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. If you'd like to check out our merchandise or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.horrorhistorianspod.com. There you can send us messages and find links to our social media sites, and also get your entries in for the contest. We still have about a week and a half or so left of that to go. We do work to respond to all the posts on our various social media accounts, so go ahead and send us some stuff over there if you'd like. If you want to participate in the show, again, just go to our website and send Mike a trivia question so you can get into the contest, etc., etc. If you have time, please go and leave us a nice 5-star review on Spotify, iTunes, or whichever platform you choose, and we do appreciate every time you do that. We check. So until next time, the Horror Historians are signing out. AMA.